it is a bit of an arms race. And to be clear, as someone who has been in the security space for a long time, it has always been an arms race. It just used to move slower and be easier to keep up with.
It breaks my heart when I get a support ticket from someone who says like, hey, can you help me? Can you bring back my site? And I'm like, well, you never really activated the backup solution, so there's nothing there for me to restore for you, and I feel for you, you know?
Simple example, we've blocked, like, last year, 8.7 trillion attacks. More than half of those were blocked in the runtime layer.
eBay and Amazon and other things siloed and shrunk the internet down to these like large islands, and those islands exist in a very different way than your individual website does on a hosting domain. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, a podcast about the role hosting plays in shaping the open web. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman. On the show, we go deeper than uptime and dashboards. We talk about hosting as infrastructure, about ownership, independence, and what it takes to be ethical, high-end WordPress hosting that actually serves creators, businesses, and the internet itself. Before we dive in, head to impressive.host. That's where you can comment on episodes, ask follow-up questions, and help shape future conversations. You'll also find links to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen. We are back with Aaron Campbell, VP of Product at Monarx. We were talking about security and the narrative that hosting companies and security companies need to build to help educate users on the threats and vulnerabilities that they face without having to leverage fear tactics and things like that. We talked a little bit about AI. We talked about WordCamp US, and that's where I want to pick up where we left off real quick, because I'm very excited about WordCamp US. It's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. It's coming up in just a few weeks. And I think it's an opportunity for us to come together as a community and an ecosystem to learn from each other, to benefit from insider knowledge around certain things, to talk about trends and things that we're learning. That's where I usually spend most of my time. I spend a lot of time with folks in meetings and going to booths and hearing about what they're building and what they're utilizing as tools. And then, I watch a lot of the sessions when I get back. WordCamp TV is constantly playing in the background. It's a nice resource of all those videos that gets published later. But Aaron, where are you spending most of your time at the conference?
But pretty similar to you. I want to go around to all the booths, all the sponsors, see what it is that they're doing. What's the exciting new thing? What are they building? You mentioned kind of just coming together and sharing knowledge being one of the things that you appreciate about the event, and that really sums up what I see in WordCamp US every year. I've been to every single WordCamp US, and most of the predecessor, the WordCamp San Francisco, because of that very reason. Sharing our knowledge around and learning from each other in that kind of space is it's so great for being aware of what's going on, but also just learning new things and finding out new things that you could try, learning how to help steer your business or your business ideas. There's so much valuable knowledge there. And I love it, the sharing of knowledge. I'm a person that likes to know everything. I'm an information addict, so it's a happy place for me.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. Plus, it's always great to shake hands and give hugs and see friends and folks and learn about what they're working on, what they're doing, what's going on in their lives. It's always
and make
nice
new
to,
ones if you don't
together.
have existing ones there.
That's very true too. Yeah. And I think if you're thinking about building a website, I mean, that's where a lot of us who've been, veterans in this space for a long time got our start. We went to a WordCamp and we got help from somebody, a stranger, probably, raised their hand and said, I'll give you a hand with something. And then ever since, we've all kind of been giving back to the community in the same way that we got it. And I think it's really great for people to think about it from that perspective, is like, it is an opportunity for me to go get some help, for me to go see somebody about, what it is I'm struggling with. These DIYers who don't necessarily know what they're doing can go and get an extra hand. But I think for agencies too, it's an opportunity for them to drive business, to meet new clients, to bring on a whole new book of business, and to develop those relationships that will to help sustain them for a really long time.
In an agency for 15 years before I got into hosting, and the connections that you build at these events, I would not have succeeded in my agency if not for WordCamps. And I think that even if you are succeeding in your agency, WordCamps, like WordCamp US especially, can really help accelerate, can help you solve some of the problems you're struggling with, identify new opportunities. I cannot overstate how useful that is to agencies.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's a cheap conference too. Like, you think about these big tech conferences, you're usually spending hundreds, thousands of dollars for a ticket. It's comparatively incredibly inexpensive to go. And I think that's interesting because, as someone who ran WordCamps in the past, I often felt like you had to help explain why the value is there, even though the price tag is so low, because typically I think people evaluate it that way. They oh, it's so cheap, it must be a cheap conference. No, there's so much value. You're getting to hear from some of the smartest minds in the industry and learn about the most innovative stuff. On that note, a nice segue, innovative stuff. What are you guys innovating on, and where are you spending your time? What's your focus right now around security threats and the other things you guys are seeing the ecosystem facing?
Oh man, Jesse, it's 2026, so it's AI stuff, right?
Right.
We are in such an interesting space as AI has improved so well. I guess first, since AI kind of released more to the public, right? Which it's only been like 4 years since kind of like ChatGPT entered the scene, and kind of everybody started experiencing AI in a much more usable way. But since then, and since it has gotten so much better, it's being used by the bad actors, and it's being used by us and others in our space to continue the fight that we've always fought of them versus us. Can I break in and use your server resources for my own purposes? Can I protect those server resources and keep you out? But with AI, the scale has changed so dramatically. The speed, like AI just really compresses the time between vulnerability disclosure and real world exploitation. It's really trying to figure out how we best leverage those tools to protect against those tools, essentially. And it has been all consuming over the last little bit. Like it's a lot, but it's exciting, and we're making great progress.
Good to hear. So is there some, like, when you think about the fact that these bad actors are leveraging these tools and moving at, breakneck speed, how does that feel on a day-to-day? Are you nervous? Do you feel like we, the good actors, the white hats, have the, speaking of white hats, do we have the necessary things, to combat those threats?
Yes, I think that we do have the necessary things to combat those threats. I think the biggest thing that it makes me super aware of, and that I think about a lot, is, are we all leveraging them as much as the bad actors are? And like you've known me for a long time, Jesse, and mostly from the WordPress space, because I'm an extreme advocate of open source software. And I have always said that open source software is not less secure. All these eyes on it can help it be more secure. But part of the benefit of that was that you had lots of people working on the software. So even though it also exposes the code to the bad actors, you've got so many good actors trying to help shepherd it and improve it, that it's still a net positive. And I think that that's still the case, but we have to purposefully keep it that way. If the bad actors are using the latest models to look at the source code and try to break into it, we need to be doing the same, to be looking at the source code, finding those same things and fixing them before they can exploit them. And I think that trickles down through so many things. Companies like ours need to be using AI as well to be monitoring the actions of all these bad actors on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of servers across the world, to see what they're doing and be able to build ways to protect them. And the only way to do that at that kind of scale is using these AI models, which is what we do to help make that possible.
Yeah, that's great. So feels though a little bit like an arms race, like the faster that they deploy something, or that they come up with a new way of using something, we have to kind of deploy the same thing, get our hands on the same technology, and use it as a way to protect. But it makes me wonder, like, is it going to be a situation where you think it's like constantly an urgent situation where we all have to kind of be at like DEFCON 1, or is it a situation where you think like maybe it'll start to level out and calm down a little bit?
I don't want to underplay the urgency here, because you're right. It is a bit of an arms race. And to be clear, as someone who has been in the security space for a long time, it has always been an arms race. It just used to move slower and be easier to keep up with. And now it's moving much faster, and the arms that are being built are improving significantly day over day, not just year over year. But I think that we know that we don't always want to be at DEFCON 1. And to do that, we have to try to step outside of it just being an arms race. Yes, if they're using this latest AI model to assess data, we're going to need to be doing that as well. There's definitely some arms racing there. They're building these tools that attack in this way. We need to be able to block those attacks. But I think that we also need to be going back to our roots a little bit in security, which we've always said all along, that the best security approach is a layered security approach, blocking at every layer with its own level of intelligence. And that has always been the gold standard. That has always been the best way to do it. But now it's really the only way to do it. And in so doing, we can work more to address and stay a little ahead of that arms race in different ways. Simple example, we've blocked, like last year, 8.7 trillion attacks. More than half of those were blocked in the runtime layer. And the interesting thing there is, essentially, as all these AI systems are coming up with brand new vulnerabilities that no one's ever seen, it just found it and immediately starts exploiting it. We're catching it based on their behavior in the runtime layer. We didn't already learn about the exact attack and write a WAF rule to protect against it, or some of the things that we've done in the past. We caught it because we saw what they were doing while they were doing it. And if you then do that at every layer along the way, that's really our best protection. Lay out the nets at every layer to catch the attacks rather than just try to shoot down each individual one after you fully understand it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. When you think about this, though, you're explaining it in a way that makes total sense, I think, in this moment, in this room, with all this context around it. But if you're an agency at home who's trying to decide on the hosting company that they're going to use for the next client, you don't always know what you need to know to be able to do a good job of evaluating a hosting company. And so there are third-party resources out there, I think, that help you to take an unbiased or approach at looking at a hosting company. Like Kevin Ohashi's web hosting benchmarks. I absolutely love it because I know Kevin personally. I know his level of integrity and how he runs those things. And shameless plugs aside, WP Cloud came out incredibly well out of those benchmarks. And so it's a very nice thing to see that, it's not that it's just another list where it's like the hosting company, they're listed based on how big their affiliate payouts are or whatever, that gets the marketing company to write the blog posts about it, right? Instead, it's actual data that shows, that we had 100% uptime, that we had the fastest response times, all these things. And so, then I think about that for security. And from security, it's a little bit more of a black box. It's harder to understand. Now, WP Cloud is a member of the Secure Hosting Alliance, I2 Coalition's effort to bring together hosting companies who are naturally competitors around governance and security and ethically good hosting. And so that's, something I can point to is say, like, hey, make sure that you're using a hosting company that has that Secure Hosting Alliance badge on it. But that still, doesn't help to explain all the things that they should be considering. So when you have this opportunity right now, you're talking to hosting companies to help them understand how they should educate people around security. You're also talking to agencies at home who might be making that decision. So what would you tell them is something that they should be looking for when evaluating a hosting company?
This is a tough one, Jesse. First of all, I agree that when you're looking for performance, uptime, that kind of stuff, it's much easier to find the information that you're looking for. And Kevin does a fantastic job with his assessment of hosts in a really unbiased way. What the I2 Coalition and the Secure Hosting Alliance is trying to do, I think, is an important part of this. They're trying to build some sort of standards that hosts can adhere to show that they have good security practices. But that then ends up still just being a bit of a binary, to your point. Do they have the Secure Hosting Alliance checkmark or not? And it's not a lot of insight into how they're meeting the various things that the Secure Hosting Alliance has laid out. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the other episode of how I think hosts really need to start bringing security forward in the way that they talk to and interact with their customers. Instead of just saying we have secure hosting, it would be great for them to be putting out the kinds of things that I would tell an agency you should check for at your host. If a host put that out there, the agencies could actually check that. Are you blocking things at the network layer, and how? Like, do you protect against distributed attacks? Because for my site, I don't have enough of a picture to block against distributed attacks. Even if I have a whole server with several sites, that's not really enough. But a host, looking at their thousands of servers, they can see those patterns of attack and block them. So are you doing something there? And what is it? Are you doing something at the server network interface? And what is it? Are you giving me things in runtime that protect me? And what is it? Are you running malware cleanup and those kinds of things? And are you just scanning for and alerting me? Are you automatically cleaning? Are you quarantining? Like, these are all things that, frankly, hosts do them. They do them in different ways and to different degrees, but then they just don't talk about them. Don't put that anywhere where an agency can say, hey, I have my checklist of these 5 things, and yes, my hosting company actually does that. And we need to get that out there so that they can, so that when I tell an agency what to look for, they can actually check that stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because prior to working at BroodProtect, a company I co-founded and we ended up selling to Automatic, I was working with hosting companies as a customer. And that was the first time I started working with hosting companies from a different perspective, in that, very similar to what you just said, which is that like at a per site level, you have a very narrow scope happening out there, where attack vectors are coming from. At the hosting level, you can see far more. You can see all these attack vectors across their entire infrastructure. But what we actually did with BroodProtect was we built a communal blacklist of information we learned from all the hosting companies that were installing this product, and then redistributing that blacklist in real time back to those hosting companies. So in fact, if a DDoS attack or brute force attack was hitting host A, we could channel those attack vectors and blacklist before they even got to host B. And of course, it would go the other way around too. So it was providing, real-time protection because we could see a larger landscape, at that moment. And then, but it makes me think about the fact that like there's this opportunity for us to do so much more in real time on behalf of the user. And I think what you're getting at is that one of the things that we can do better is even if we handle things automatically, you can do a lot good by educating the user on what actually happened and occurred. So it's this idea of taking action, analyzing that action, and then like maybe I'm trying to find another A word, annotating that action and like reporting it, right? And so it's a double-sided approach, because it's not only educating the customer on what happened so that they have a better understanding of their vulnerability, their place in this world, and what it is that's their responsibility, but it also reinforces that you are protecting them, which gives them, a little bit more peace of mind and makes them feel a little bit better. Of course, it's a commercial interest there in which, you're actually improving your brand awareness and the effectiveness of what you're working on and all those things. But, I like that idea of taking automated action and then telling people. So like one of the things that we have at WP Cloud is we have like defender mode, right? So it's this opportunity to automatically do some kind of, real-time test to see if the person request or the system that's requesting the website is actually, making a legitimate request, or is it like a botnet or something like that. And so it's an option that you can turn on your own as a user, but we can also decide to take that action on your behalf. And so I think one of the things that's is really good, it's like give people the options to make their own decisions, but it's a lot like, watching your kid. You want to give them the freedom to make their own decisions, and, and hopefully they're making smart decisions, and maybe they're climbing that rock at the playground, and you don't need to interfere or get involved until you start to see them maybe possibly climbing the bigger rock that, got a sheer face or something like that, right? And then you can step in at that exact moment and say, hey, I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to help you through this moment. And I think there's something there about the balance of doing things in an automatic way, and then balancing that with giving them the tools to also take that action on their own, and supplementing that with a little bit more awareness or education or reporting on, hey, this is how we solve this for you.
I think that I completely agree with you on all those points. The biggest thing that kind of stood out first is your kind of assertion that when a host is doing something in an automated way and blocking things automatically, that's good. And you should let your customer know that you did that, because it does two things. It raises their awareness that stuff is happening out there, and will probably make them a little bit more aware of the fact that they really are being targeted, or not targeted, but hit and attacked, even though they aren't a very big target. And it also builds the trust. Hey, I was being attacked, but my host stopped it and kept my site safe. I'm happy about that. Um, and I think that, but for us, a lot of that comes in with um, making sure that our dashboards that raise to customers can show, hey, there were all these things that happened, but it starts with a green banner that's like, you're all clear. Everything has been cleaned up, or everything was blocked. And now here are the details around what has happened. And those numbers, even for relatively small sites, can grow pretty quickly. And so without that friendly green banner saying everything's already been taken care of, it can be a little scary to be like, wow, my site was probed 100 times in the last 24 hours for, looking for vulnerabilities. Yeah, that's normal. That's the everyday work we do to keep you safe, right? And then to your point about when something is going wrong and the end user's not doing enough to like opt into some of these features, like what did you call it? Defender mode,
Yeah.
WP Cloud.
Yeah.
We have all these different layers that Monarx offers as tools, and that therefore the hosts that run Monarx offer. And some of those layers are optional, or run in detect only mode unless you turn them onto block mode. But our hosts, one of the things that we very much encourage them to do is, hey, if you've got a user that's actively under attack, turn Threat Shield, our runtime monitoring, into block mode for them, even though they didn't do that themselves, and protect them and tell them
Right.
that you did that, and take the credit for it, but protect them. And I think that that's a great path to take. And if you want to continue gating something like that as an upsell, which, depending on what it is, some things make sense that way and some things don't. But you can still enable it and say, hey, we enabled a free 1-month trial of this to keep you safe, because that was a worry. But for $2 a month, you can solve this, or whatever it is. It still builds trust and keeps your customer safe all in one go. It feels like the easy path forward for getting customers to appreciate security.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's something that's really interesting is when you sell security products, you're kind of always in this weird spot where you have to keep the lights on. You have to invest in research and development and the tools that you need to defend these sites. So you do need to take money. We are in a commercial society after all. But at the same time, like, you feel for these websites and these website owners who are struggling or having an issue and all that. And so how do you balance that? I really do like that idea, though, that like you're giving them an opportunity by being generous. You're saying, we identify that this is an attack happening. It's not good. It's not for anybody, but we can just give this to you for free as a limited solution. You'll see that it actually works. Let them feel the benefits of it, and then give them the option to continue paying for it, or at the very least, they know that it's something that they can enable the next time themselves manually and pay for it that way. But it's always a balance. Like, it's the same thing with backups. Like, we have Jetpack backups, real-time backups. It comes with an activity log. It shows you every change on your site. It's basically an undo button. And, there are times where people think that just because they're using the free version of Jetpack, that there is some kind of restore point somewhere that exists. And it breaks my heart when I get a support ticket from someone who says like, hey, can you help me? Can you bring back my site? And I'm like, well, you never really activated the backup solution. So there's nothing there for me to restore for you. And I feel for you, And, usually in those moments, we're giving away, a license for a short period of time or a free trial or something to try and help them, feel a little bit more confident. But it's tough because storage, for example, is incredibly expensive. Running backups on every site that we want to run it on is not necessarily feasible. So it kind of circles back to that education idea, and then the fact that you're making yourself a little bit more aware of what it is you're doing, and being from a brand perspective, maybe a little bit more self-aggrandizing, and being comfortable saying, we're doing this for you, we're helping you through this moment. But I think it still needs to have that little twinge of optimism, so that they're not sitting around feeling scared the whole time that something's wrong, or they made a mistake, or broke something.
I don't think I'm not a fan of the scare tactics to get people to buy, but I do think that a little bit more transparency and a little bit of that kind of aggrandizing that you're talking about, claiming the things that you're doing, it are both really important here. In physical products, when there's an add-on, a new thing, or if you're buying a car, the extra package or the sunroof or whatever it is, like, we understand that all those things have costs associated with them, which is why the cost of the thing I'm buying is going up. And when it comes to these digital things, hosting, and the security built on top of that, and the backups built around that, a lot of times people don't see the added expense and actual real costs around that. They don't put that together in the same way in their mind. And part of that, I think, is because we don't talk about them as these separate things that had to be built and that have things powering them that's separate from what we're doing. There's been a lot of everything's just bundled into this one hosting package, buy it and get everything. And that's been the mentality for years, but it's trained our users to not appreciate some of the things that cost us. And I think that we need to get out of that with the way that we talk about things, and claim those benefits that we're building, so that the end user learns to appreciate them, and value them.
It's funny because with WordProtect, one of the reasons that we grew as fast as we did is because we did something very simple, which is that when you arrived in your WP admin, there was a dashboard widget that showed how many attacks we had thwarted for you. And so that counter just kept going up and up and up. And so it created this passive awareness of what was going on. So it wasn't like we were hounding you with notifications. We weren't like pinging your phone every single time somebody tried to get into your site. But there was this counter that kept going up. And so every time that you went into your site, you saw that it was just kind of incrementing a little bit. And I think that helped to make people more aware of the fact that, like, this is constantly working to protect you all the time. And then what we ended up doing was creating a little share button. And so people ended up sharing it on Twitter and Facebook and other places where they were saying, like, my WordProtect has protected my site from 10,000 attacks this or something like that. And it was a really nice way to kind of crowdsource awareness around the security vulnerabilities that exist. But the thing that's interesting in the juxtaposition to that with social media is that no one would ever think to themselves, like, I need to figure out a way to back up my Facebook page or my TikTok profile, or, I don't have to worry about security with those things. And I think because so many folks think of the internet as these platforms that they live on, like it's not just social media, but it's also like e-commerce platforms like eBay and Amazon and other things, siloed and shrunk the internet down to these like large islands. And those islands exist in a very different way than your individual website does on a hosting company. And I don't know that that's necessarily something that people think about. So their exposure to this type of internet usage is limited, I think. It goes back to that barrier of entry thing that we talked about in the first episode. But anyways, really great having you on, Aaron. Really awesome always hearing your perspective about what's going on in the security world and the hosting world. Thank you so much for joining. If there's anything else you want to share or let us know, now's the time. Otherwise, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I think the only thing is, man, the open web is worth defending. Let's all keep working together to do that very thing. I'm proud to be a part of Monarx and making that happen. I think that's my biggest call
Couldn't have
out.
said it better myself. Defend the open web. That's a great way to leave it. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.